Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you are joining us today. My name is Victoria Wilcott, and I'm the General Manager of City Opera Vancouver and your host of today's album launch. Welcome. Today, we are joined by the opera's creators and artists who originated the roles in Chinatown, the opera. Before I walk you through the outline of today's show and introduce you to everyone, I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. I know we are all coming to you today from various places around the globe. I myself am in Vancouver, BC, so I'd like to acknowledge with gratitude that I live, work, and play on the unceded and traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Peoples. Acknowledging place, I think, is really appropriate given how this opera, Chinatown, acts not only as the setting and the backdrop of our story, but also as a character in a way that really interacts with all of the characters and artists on stage. Before we get to today's launch and outline, I thought I'd share with you the format of what today will look like. We're going to begin by introducing you to the creative team and the artistic team, and we'll also be playing you some excerpts from the album. Also, we'll be fielding questions. So if at any time you have discussions or just things that pop into your head, feel free to drop them into the live chat and we'll get to them throughout the show. This album came onto streaming services about 24 hours ago, and we're so thrilled. Our creators, Alice, Paul, and Maddie, as well as everyone at City Opera, felt it's so important that the album be available. Not only is the cast celebrating our 1-year anniversary of the stage concert at the Vancouver Playhouse, but it also marks the 100-year anniversary of the Chinese Exclusion Act in Canada. The production team and artists were so committed to the single vision of this story, and I really feel like this show and this album exemplify how an artistic team can work tirelessly together to bring forth a really important story. This was, of course, made possible by our Canada Council grant, and we are extremely proud of the recording available now on all streaming services. Our album was produced by Leaf Music, and with that, I'd like to begin today's show with a short introduction by Jeremy Van Slyke, owner of Leaf Music.
Hi everyone, my name is Jeremy Van Slyke and I'm the owner of Leaf Music. We're very proud of this latest release, Chinatown, and we want to congratulate all of the cast and crew involved, especially City Opera Vancouver, Alice Ho, composer, Maddie Tien, librettist, and Paul Yi, translator. We wish you all a happy release and hope that there'll be lots of success for this project.
Congratulations indeed. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to the faces and folks who are joining me today. And I think it would be fun perhaps to tell everyone at home who you are, where you're joining us today, and your role in the Chinatown album. And finally, one word that you feel describes this album. Let's start off with the artist intros and then we'll move into the creators. Perhaps Vanya, do you want to begin?
Okay. Okay. Hi, my name is Vanya Chan. I'm a soprano, and I sang the roles of Wen Li and Baby Anna in the recorded album and in the live stage production as well. And if I were to pick a word that would describe Chinatown, the first word that comes to my head is family. It's just family in the story was a big theme, and then the family that we created as a creative team and all the artists involved. So that's I think that's a special word to use for it. Okay.
Maybe Emma?
Hi, my name is Emma Parkinson, and I am here in beautiful Vancouver, BC. And I sang the role of Anna and Lingling in the performance of Chinatown last year. And the word that comes to mind when listening to this album and just being part of this whole process was resilience.
Perfect. Spencer?
Hello, my name is Spencer Britton. I sang Saihin in our production of Chinatown, and I'm coming to you from Budapest, Hungary right now. One word that comes to my mind thinking about this album is tears, because it just makes me weep. It's so emotional for me, and I sent an email to the cast when we first listened to the album, and I was quietly sobbing in a cafe in Budapest. So tears would be my word in the best way possible.
Perfect. We'll move maybe to Alice.
Hi, I'm Alice Ho. I'm the composer of Chinatown. There are many words, but if I have to choose one word to describe, it's love. Definitely, this is an opera. Without love, we're nothing. Thank you.
And Paul?
Hi, I'm Paul Yee. I'm in Toronto right now. I'm the Hoisanese librettist to Chinatown. When I think of the album Chinatown, I think of lasting, because the music stays in my mind and won't quit. It is there all the time. Thank you, Alice.
Absolutely. At City Opera and really everywhere, I think that opera is ignited by both words and music. And it's hard to think about which comes first. But when City Opera decided to make a commission for Chinatown, we decided that the words would come first. So our founding artistic director, Charles Barber, first conceived of the idea of Chinatown in mid-2007, actually, and we began its development then. We spent a year searching for the right storyteller and found Madeleine Tien, who we commissioned to write a scenario and thereafter a draft libretto. 1 year later, we began talking to Madeleine and taking her draft to various private and public workshops. And later, we met Paul Yee, who did all of the Hoisanese translations for the opera. Only after we had a beta-tested libretto did we select a composer best qualified to set it. A small note about City Opera's commissions is that we have a very unique way of finding our composers. Once a libretto has been developed, we send out a portion to various composers who write music to accompany it. And the music is then heard, sort of like a blind musical taste test by a panel who then selects a composer. So we are very proud that Alice Ping Ho was commissioned, and thereafter we held a public music workshop with her. I'd like now to introduce you to Alice, who's going to tell us a little bit about herself, perhaps, and what it was like to go through this process and develop the score that you hear in the album.
Thank you. I'm actually here in Aurelia, Ontario. So sitting here today and looking back in the last 3 years, I grew so personal and so close to the project Chinatown. From the creation to the recording, I felt I have built a family. It is such a great honor to be commissioned by City Opera Vancouver to, write this opera. I'm very proud because this is the first ever Hoisanese English opera made in Canada. And it is the heart and soul of a team of amazing creators, performers, producers. And in the last 3 years, we faced different challenges. When I took on the project, I was very concerned because I don't speak Hoisanese. Hoisanese is a language that's spoken by the early Chinese immigrant when they first found settlement in North America, and I'm not familiar. But growing up in Hong Kong, I have a hint. I know Cantonese, and I have some general concept of the formula of the tonality of Chinese language. But without Paul, our wonderful Hoisanese writer that guided me through the process, it is a miracle that I would be able to write this opera in a different dialect. And also, it meant so much to my roots, paying tribute to the pioneers who settled in early Vancouver Chinatown. So I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to work with these two wonderful writers. Now we are good friends. I hope Maddie and Paul. And I'm so impressed with the 6 lead singers. and the 8 men singing the Ghost Chorus, and the 10 musicians playing Chinese and Western instruments, all under the wonderful direction of conductor Mary Chung, to bring this beautiful performance recorded and released commercially so that it will reach more audience in the world. So I hope, we all celebrate today, and I hope, there will be a life for Chinatown to many parts of the world.
Amazing. I mentioned earlier that City Opera does their commissions a little bit differently. We start with the scenario first and then give out a bit of that scenario to different composers, and we do a blind taste test, if you will. Alice, when you saw that scenario or the piece of the libretto for the first time, what were some sounds that you knew you wanted to include in what became the album?
To me, I think it's very important to find something new, but respectful and genuine to the tonality of the language. And I found Hausanese language is quite pentatonic. So it is a big challenge. I was concerned whether it's actually possible to translate into something very dramatic, build on that, the nature of the dialect. But I think to me it's also a great learning process to rediscover this language, actually quite beautiful and so musical and so much possibility. And I already hear the, using Chinese instruments, but at the same time with, the harp and the piano and the string trio, so that let's give a fresh nuances to the atmosphere and the quality of the language. I hope this is something fresh to the audience. And to me, this is a very exciting and challenging, but at the same time, rewarding process.
Agreed. It was really cool to hear the Western instruments blended with the Chinese instruments. Alice is really humble. She's done a lot of work beyond Chinatown. But Alice, maybe what was different about this score that you created compared to past works that you have done?
The main difference is the language. I think more than half of the opera is set in Hausanese. So there's a complex nature of adjusting my, the tonality of the language, and also the temperament of the Chinese instrument. They're all fixed scales. So there's a lot of concern and balances. Compared to my last 2 opera, I also use Chinese instrument, but the 2 opera are not set extensively in the Chinese dialect. There are some Mandarin, and which is quite familiar to myself, which I found comfortable. So this is the one that I felt I accomplished something like pushing the boundary, what to say, a cross-cultural opera in that sense.
Amazing. Yeah, both of my grandparents actually immigrated to Vancouver in 1957, and they spoke Khoisanese, and I had actually never heard it before because they've kind of moved on into speaking Cantonese mostly at home. So I'd never heard it, and it was really, really neat for me to hear my family's dialect on stage. I have one last question for you, Alice. Why do people need to listen to this album?
Definitely. I think there are many aspects. First of all, this is an important recording that pay tribute, as I said, to the pioneers, workers that's, facing all the challenges and hardship. And this is a story of many of us, of our roots. And the second aspect is I'm so grateful and impressed by our cast. They are all, most of them are young musicians. And they grew up in, not in China, and they don't even speak a word of Chinese, but their dedication and passion at the result. Paul was telling me, he also, I'm so impressed with the singing in Hausanese is so genuine and so much diligent in studying and respectfulness. So I hope and the story, of course, is such a beautiful story about families that span 3 generations. I just feel this is so intact with a lot of people in the world, especially Chinese Canadians. So I think this is wonderful that we get this opportunity to put this on a recording and be shared.
Absolutely. I'd like to move on to talk a little bit more about the translations, which we have alluded to are really, really integral to the album. Deep and recurring community engagement has been a central part of every opera that we've created at City Opera Vancouver. This recording was shaped in many ways by over 140 private consultations and workshops led by us and also our community coordinator, Susan Ma. Public workshops were also held at many of the Chinatown venues itself over a 3-year period while the libretto was being developed. Hundreds of people attended our multiple public workshops in Chinatown and gave us a lot of really useful criticism and comments about how the opera should be shaped. And our opera changed because of it. The importance of the Hoisan language to Vancouver's Chinatown is something we could have only ever discovered by seeking and listening to the voices of those who had a history in the community. And this, I think, leads me to Paul Yi. Paul, our translator for the libretto, what do you remember about your involvement and kind of how it began with Chinatown?
Well, I remember Charles approaching me, and I thought, Charles, you know that Hoisanese is a very tonal language, and are we going to be able to sing it? And Charles said, don't worry. He said, professional opera singers sing in German, Italian, French. They just listen and they will get it. Don't you worry. Of course, I worried because Hoisanese is a very tonal language and it's really close to my heart. But true to Charles' words, all the singers came through. They nailed the dialect perfectly. And I find it a difficult dialect because it's so tonal. But all the singers got it, whether they had spoken any Chinese or none at all. They listened, they rehearsed, and they got it. I was just bowled over.
Yeah, agreed. It's maybe a lot of people don't know this, but Paul actually sat in at every rehearsal and was there as a dialect coach because all of the singers were learning this language for the first time. And singing in it, I think, is very different than reading it or even just speaking it to yourself. Paul, what was it like to read Maddie's libretto and to kind of pick out pieces and aspects of it to decide how do I translate this and what will it sound like on stage?
Well, when I read Maddie's libretto, I was thunderstruck. It was a very intimate, poignant piece about a very human relationship. And the words that she had chosen in English were very gentle, very persuasive. And so I thought, okay, let me try to imagine Hoisanese men speaking these words. And I grew up hearing a lot of Hoisanese. My uncle ran a boarding house where a lot of the men spoke it. So I just imagined what these words would come out. And of course, over the history, there was a lot of anger and a lot of tension, a lot of yearning, a lot of emotion in Maddie's writing that I was able to kind of fish out of my experiences with the language as a kid. So I was really pleased about that.
Great. The Hoisan singer, as her name suggests, narrates entirely in Hoisanese and is kind of accompanied by a ghost choir. It's a really unique feature of our album. Who is the Hoisan singer and kind of maybe how is it unique or different? And what was that like writing for her?
Oh, the Hoisan singer is a wonderful role. It is the guide. It's the guide into the opera. She introduces the time, the place, and the characters, but she's also above it all. She's seen everything, felt everything. She knows the community. And so she's singing from that community sense of what have these men gone through? What is the future going to be like? And it's her emotion that sort of opens the curtains to this broader tapestry of emotions that come through in the singing. So the Hoisan singer is really key. And we were very careful to choose words that, again, reflected the Hoisanese dialect in terms of being very concrete terms, very concrete images.
Beautiful. My last question for you, Paul, is why do people, Canadians really, why do we need to stream this album?
We need to stream this album to hear Hoisanese because the dialect is vanishing on the streets of Chinatown. It's being replaced by Cantonese and Mandarin. And so be it, given the population change. But Hoisanese, as Alice is a beautiful language. It has its own character, its own rhythms, its own peculiarities. It's a rural dialect. In a way, it's very coarse, but it's also very, very human. So if you want to understand Chinatown from whatever level, getting a sense of Hoisanese is one way into it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Paul. Chinatown very much exists because of the inspired collaboration of Alice, Maddie, and Paul, and the many friends and artists who joined in generous support. The glue that I think really brought the story together was our musical director and co-producer of the album, Mary Chen. Mary hailed to us from beautiful San Francisco, where she is the conductor of San Francisco's Earplay Ensemble. In China, she is the music supervisor and director for Seven Ages, which produces Broadway hits in Mandarin translations to Chinese audiences. Beyond all of those credentials, Mary was very much a rock in this production and the recording. I'm very grateful to have worked alongside her, trying to get this recording into the homes and into your hearts. While Mary couldn't be here today, she is currently in China. Here is a message that she sent our way.
Ni hao, everyone. Greetings from Beijing, where I have just started rehearsals for the French musical Mozart the Rock Opera in Mandarin translation. It's a little bit different from what I was doing last year at this same time in Vancouver, working with all the incredible singing artists and fantastic musicians for the world premiere of Chinatown, the most beautiful, incredible piece of music written about our people, in my humble opinion. I am thrilled about the opera's CD release today, and that Alice's magical music blended with Madeline and Paul's wonderful storytelling will be heard now by a worldwide audience. Thank you so much, Alice, Madeline, and Paul, for this beautiful piece, and a big congratulations going out to all the artists and musicians for your amazing work. 谢谢.
Thank you, Mary. We've introduced you now to the creators and explained how City Opera commissioned, drafted, and workshopped the show. But I think it's finally time for you to meet the artist who brought this story to life. The format of this section will be a short introduction of each singer, followed by an excerpt from their aria. I'll then proceed to a Q&A, and feel free to drop your questions in the chat if you'd like to engage with the singers. Our first artist that I'm going to introduce you to is Erica Iris Huang, who originated the role of the Hoisan singer. And as Paul alluded to, she acts as a sort of guide or narrator alongside the ghost chorus. Erica is currently in rehearsals and couldn't be with us today, but here is an excerpt from her aria.
Kan kigan no fai nam sing I mu noi ai heu chang sen sit gu doi hoi sang yin hoi sui hak ha gan vo leng con kịp hồi môn hơn hùng chút chút dịp lo lệ la ga gi đôi
Thank you so much. What a really beautiful aria. We're going to jump next to Spencer Britton, who's joining us from Budapest. We'd like to maybe begin with a short intro. Spencer, can you tell us a little bit about why this role was so special to you? And then we'll jump into your aria afterwards.
So Hoisan is also the dialect of my family. Growing up, my grandparents speak Hoisan at home, and my mom speaks Hoisan as well. So the project became very, very special for me immediately. As soon as I was asked if I was at all interested in flying back to Vancouver, I was living in Berlin at the time. When I was asked to fly back to be a part of this project, the answer was an immediate yes. There was no way I couldn't be a part of this. And then getting to know Sai Heen was just so magical. The story from Maddie and Paul really made Sai Heen so lovable, and I think so relatable for everyone. And Alice captured that in the music so beautifully. I think Sai Heen in general was just, in my eyes, so perfect, and I couldn't have asked for a more exciting, beautiful role to sing.
Perfect. We're going to be playing a short clip from Sai Heen's aria, and it comes right at the end of Act 1. So here it is.
Were we brave enough? Were we strong enough to love? Took all my courage. Nothing without love. Inside Trogan mood, Soyan Hosotu, Chengo Tegimkut.
I love that part. I love how it began with, were we brave enough? Were we strong enough? Nothing without love. And I think, Spencer, that's the only part of the show where your character speaks English. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a part where he and Chonpon, where he's trying to learn English, so he's trying to speak in broken English, but these are like the first sentences he really says and really means what he's saying in English.
Right. Why is that aria such a pivotal moment for your character?
Well, oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry again. Every night I sang it, I was weeping as I was leaving the stage, for sure. Not during the aria, but it's his farewell. He doesn't get to die in the arms of his love. His love goes off to save his family, and Sai Heen is just kind of left to say goodbye to the life he'd been fighting so hard for, and he was fighting so hard to provide for his daughter and his granddaughters, and it's just such a beautiful farewell to everything that he had tried to create, and he never got to see in fruition. But yeah, it's just very poetic, very beautiful, and definitely for Sai Heen, one of the most emotional parts of the show.
Absolutely. For you, Spencer, I know you have roots in Vancouver. What was it like performing that at the Playhouse?
It was huge for me. It was a big homecoming. I had left Vancouver in, I think it was 2018. I left Vancouver. I hadn't performed there since then. So it was a big homecoming for me to get to perform in Vancouver again. And my first ever show was The Music Man at the Playhouse when I was in grade 4. So it really was like a big full circle moment for me. So it was really, really incredible. And having my family there. And, you know, a lot of my family is not so into traditional opera, but this was something that was able to really bring them out because it spoke so much to their history. And even family members that don't have the immigration background to their story, it affected them so much because they had so much understanding for the culture that they experience day to day in Vancouver and people they love and have come to know. It really, really touched everyone. From the feedback I got is that this story, this opera, really touched everyone that came to see it.
Agreed. Yeah, there's something very powerful about seeing yourself and your story on stage. Spencer, I know you mentioned that you had a little bit of background with Hoisanese because that was the dialect that your family grew up speaking. What was it like for you, though, to work with Paul and to practice it in opera form?
Oh, it was so exciting because I never really studied Hoisan. It was just what was spoken at home. But I was put in Mandarin school when I was young, and I studied Mandarin in high school. I don't speak Mandarin now. I tried, but I kind of learned what to look for when reading the pinyin and how the tones work in Mandarin. And the Hoisan just uses a very different system, and I found it so fascinating working with Paul and studying the language about how the tones work and then seeing how Alice incorporated them into the music. It was really, really fascinating. It was definitely a challenge, but like all opera singers have to learn to sing in different languages that we don't always speak. So it was a challenge that I was so excited for. And of course, my family was so excited for. So for me, the motivation was there to learn it as best I can. And I think it came off pretty well.
Perfect. And my final question is the same one I will ask everyone. Why do people need to stream this album?
There are so many reasons to stream the album. It's so beautiful for me hearing the orchestra mixed with Western sounds and traditional Chinese instruments is absolutely gorgeous. The story itself is so beautiful. It's all, like Vanya said, it's all about love in so many different forms between so many different kinds of relationships. It's absolutely beautiful and captivating. And I hope people take a listen to it, and I hope people get a chance to see it someday soon.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Spencer. The next artist that I'm going to introduce you to is Vanya Chan, who played the role of Wen Li and baby Anna. I'm going to let Vanya introduce herself and let us know maybe where she's coming from us today and a little bit about her character.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vanya, and I am streaming to you today from Richmond Hill, which is just north of Toronto, but I'm sort of basically Torontonian in a lot of ways. And so the characters that I play are Wen Li and baby Anna. Wen Li is sort of the main role, and she's a young girl of about 15 or 16 years old. She immigrated to Canada with her sister Anna around the 1950s, and both of them grew up in Chinatown in Vancouver, BC. Wen Li has this youthful idealism that I love so much about her, and throughout the opera, we see this arc in her life and in her emotional development. She had to grow up quite quickly with all the challenges that she had to face in growing up in Chinatown. And one of the things that I love about her character is how she expresses her love for her hometown. She has a soft spot for Kiefer Street. She sings about Kiefer Street, and just enjoys the community that she's grown up in. She has big dreams. She wants to be a theoretical physicist when she grows up, so she wants to go to university. And in the end, she sort of has this ultimate sacrifice that I think really just kind of makes me love her even more as a character, because you see from this young child. You see this beginning of a young woman who just learns to let go and learns to show love through this realization that everyone wants different things, and we have to learn to accept that and live as ourselves and move on. So that's what I love about Wen Li.
Perfect. We'll get to a Q&A. We're first going to start off with an excerpt from the aria. Here it is.
Here on Kiefer Street, all that I love. See Mr. Liu throws a pork bun at his dog. Here on Kiefer Street, Teacher Ping shouts, 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 shouts. Here on Kiefer Street, inked hat on a pigeon's head. Here on Kiefer Street, all that I love. Why won't Anna love it? Here on Kiefer Street.
Perfect. When I began the show and mentioned that Chinatown kind of acts as a character in itself, I feel like this aria is a really good example of that in the way that you interact with Kiefer Street. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like to kind of develop that?
Well, we did a semi-staged sort of version of this show, and so a lot of it was moving through the chorus, kind of sort of seeing the people that I would sort of envision on Kiefer Street, and and the music that Alice wrote is just so it encapsulates exactly the kind of liveliness and energy. So it's very easy to just um, very easy to fall into the character and fall into the moment. And I really, really enjoyed like little moments like imagining a pigeon with like an egg tart hat on their head. And it's just something that I love to sing and love to perform over and over again. So I was very glad that I got to sing it live and to do it for the recording. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's so joyful. Um, for you, did you have any experience working with Hoisanese or having to learn a different dialect prior to this show?
I'm familiar with Mandarin, and I'm still, chucking along and trying to speak the language as best as possible. Khoisan is very new for me, and I didn't have as much to speak in the opera, but the little that I did and the amount of time that I got to work with Paul, I just absolutely treasured, and I wanted to do more by the end of the opera. I wish I had more to do in the opera. I got to sing some Hoisan for Baby Anna, and then I got to speak some as Wen Li. So the challenges between singing and speaking are quite different too. The intonations are complex, and when you're singing it, it's sort of written in for you because Alice was very sensitive to the intonations and wrote it into our melodic lines. Speaking it though was a little bit more exposed and vulnerable, so I only had a few lines, but I drilled those lines so that I could be as authentic as possible. But I really enjoyed the experience of learning the language.
Perfect. And I know, Vanya, you also have some roots in Vancouver. What was it like performing here for people you knew and family?
Well, I have some family in Vancouver, but I actually had never visited Vancouver before, and I mean, a couple of times, but that Chinatown was the first time that I got to perform in Vancouver. So I felt like it was such a learning experience to learn about the history of the Immigration Act and of Chinatown, and just to sort of explore um, so many different facets of my culture and its roots in Canada and then to be able to sort of express a story based in that history through beautiful music. Made a lot of memories. I definitely made a lot of memories, and I really enjoyed singing with City Opera and with this cast. And every night was just a pleasure to perform it, and then to have this album sort of just to seal the deal and make the memory even more special. It's just great. So just very happy. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Last question for you is
Okay.
why do we need to stream this album?
Uh, as, as Spencer said, so many reasons, as everyone who so far has spoken has said. But I just have to say, every night when I heard the first few notes playing from the orchestra, it just transported me to a whole other era, a whole other just landscape. And I feel people need to hear this and experience the story. And there's so many things that you can relate to just through the humanity of it, the emotions. Um, as I said, family is such a big thing in the big theme in this opera, and we all feel that tug when we think about being parted from loved ones or having opportunities and excitement of that. And so there's just so much to kind of pull at the heartstrings. And I really, really encourage people to download the album, to hopefully see this opera if it gets shown again. It'll just, I think it'll take your breath away. So
Perfect. Thank you so much, Vanya.
thank
We're
you.
going to be moving on to our next artist, Derek Kwan, who plays Eugene. Eugene in the show is a paper son. And he represents, I think, in the show that even though time can pass and generations move on, there are still hardships and racism that continues. But so too does love. Love very much continues. So here is a clip from Derek's aria.
愛見你會醒，世界貧困乜個意，丟 em chui phong tu song ban, hân cái yêu chi vật có mồi, cái có nhìn con. I sent money back, small gifts, a little comb. I grew used to this disguise, a paper bird, a paper bird inside a paper sky.
Perfect. I hope you enjoyed that. Derek, unfortunately, is in rehearsals today and couldn't join us, but we really appreciate that aria. I think it's really fitting that we're following Eugene's aria with Emma's characters because Emma plays Eugene's love interest. Emma, would you maybe introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your characters, and then we'll be playing an excerpt from your aria as well.
Absolutely. So hi, I'm Emma, and I'm streaming here from Vancouver as well. I sang two roles in the show. In the first act, I sang the role of Ling Ling, which was Sai Hin's daughter and baby Anna's mother. And then in the second act, I played the role of Anna, which is Wen Li's older sister and, yes, Eugene's love interest. So Anna is very different than Wen Li in that Wen Li has such a love and connection to Chinatown. While Anna does in a way, she's very eager to leave and explore other parts of the world and explore her own independence and find, while she holds her family very dear, she wants to find some independence from them as well. So yeah, it was really an honor to portray both of those characters.
Perfect. And here is an excerpt from Emma's aria.
Next year the street will be gone, Chinatown in ruins. This was never our home. A different life. I need to find it. Every time I take a photo, I hold the light before it's gone. Von Bach has dreams for us. Last year I sent my photos out looking for work. The landform tracing project, you and I, if we're together.
Beautiful. It doesn't really show through in the album, but in the stage version of the show, a really unique thing about Emma is that she had a really special costume. I thought it would just be neat to talk about that. Emma, would you tell us a little bit about what you wore and why it was special?
Absolutely. What I wore during the show?
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually both of the cheongsams that I wore were my grandmother's. The blue one that I wore in the second half was one, my mom actually has a whole case of my grandmother's old dresses. And so I went through, when we were putting the show on, I went through this whole suitcase and was trying to find ones that I thought would work well. And this blue one happened to fit really well. And it was just a lovely representation of my grandmother. And actually, interestingly enough, the character of Anna reminds me a lot of my grandmother's story, in a different sense, but in the sense that my grandmother was a very independent person, and she ended up actually branching out and leaving her family in China. So there's a lot of sort of parallels that I drew from her story to Anna's. So it was pretty special for me.
Perfect. I think one of the big themes in the opera comes from Sahin's line, "Nothing without love." And Emma, I think your character is really unique because you're kind of torn between love for your sister and your family and love for Eugene. Can you tell us a little bit about how you portray that and kind of how it comes through in the album?
Yeah, I mean, I think Alice did such a beautiful job of sort of having Anna's character most of the time in ensembles with the people that she was closest to. There's not many times that she has a solo moment, and I think it sort of represents how she is struggling between those two things, her family and Eugene, and also wanting her own path of wanting to explore, pardon me, her own ideas of what she wants for her future with her photography. So I think a lot of it was just really trying to tap into my own feelings about my family. You know, I also have a sister, and just knowing the close feeling that you have, and but yet also wanting to find your own story and find your own journey and your own new way forward, but not ever forgetting about the love that you feel for the people that mean the most to you and where you come from.
Perfect. Emma, I know you're coming to us from Vancouver and you have family here. What was it like to perform for them?
Sorry, what was one more question?
What was it like to perform for them here in Vancouver?
Yeah, it was amazing. My parents both came and they loved it. And it was, unfortunately, my grandmother is no longer with us, so she wasn't able to come. But it was really special. And I think that was my first time performing at the Playhouse. And just the cast, I have to say, we had such a special group of people on this show. That I truly hold them so dear to my heart to this day. And I miss them all. And even watching Derek's video, I was just smiling because we don't get to see each other very often. And so it was just, I feel like the word special has been used so many times today, but it really was a really unique performance and experience to be part of.
Perfect. And finally, Emma, why do we need to stream this album?
Yes. I'm gonna echo what everyone else has been saying so far because it's just true. I think this album is a truly unique and it's revolutionary, really. I mean, you don't often have, like we mentioned at the beginning, Western instruments mixed with Chinese instruments. That's not a common thing that we hear. So in as far as a sound world, that's a really unique thing to listen for. And then I think even if you don't understand the language Hoisanese, you're gonna feel the love and the artistry that everybody brought to this album. So I just think it's worth a listen. Absolutely.
Perfect. Our last artist, Matthew Lee, could not be with us today, but just a few words about him and his character. He plays Jean-Pan, and he kind of acts as a rock throughout the whole show, first for Sahin, Spencer's character, and then later on for the family that he adopts. He sent us a video from Montreal, so we're first going to play that, and then it will be followed by an excerpt from his aria. Here's Matthew.
Hey everyone, it's Matthew Lee checking in with this pre-recorded video from Montreal. I want to wish our brilliant composer Alice Ho, librettist Madeline Teen, and the entire cast and crew a happy release of our original cast album of the new opera Chinatown, which we premiered and recorded in Vancouver last September 2022. I'm so happy that this album has finally made it to release because I know how much heart and effort everyone has put into this project. I want to thank in particular Alice, Madeline, and City Opera Vancouver for taking me on and trusting in my abilities to lend my voice to tell this beautiful story. Our story of our two friends, Thonpon and Sahin, remembers and honors the first generations of Chinese immigrants who came to Canada and paved the way for people like me and families like mine so that we can call this country our home. Beyond that, I hope our story inspires us all to stay connected with each other and to cherish our loved ones. Happy listening, everyone.
Here on Kiefer Street have I lived 10,000 years. Your granddaughter sighing. We hold each other safe. This ocean too small to hold our memories.
Perfect. So you've now gotten a chance to hear an excerpt from all of the arias. Of course, if you stream the album, you'll get to hear the entire thing. But we're going to move now into a Q&A portion of the show. I have some questions, but if you have any questions for the artist, feel free to drop them in the chat. A little bit of maybe BTS or background info is that the recording, we didn't even know that we would be making this album when we began rehearsals. When we started rehearsals in August of 2022, we thought we would just be doing the show. And we found out midway through rehearsals that actually we got a Canada Council grant, which would allow us to do a recording. So my first question is for Alice and Paul, creators. What was your reaction when you found out we were actually going to be doing a recording after the show was over?
Well, my reaction was, are the singers going to be here? They're not going to leave us, are they? Alice?
Yeah, I think I was absolutely thrilled, at the same time very concerned. I was urged Charles Baba, and that time he was the artistic director. Can we just find a recording venue? Can we, like book the singers and so many get to work? So I'm all excited and at the same time very anxious that to make this come through.
Yeah, we found out at the end of August 2022, and then we ended up recording 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, and we recorded at the K-Meek Theatre in West Vancouver. For artists, what about you? What was your reaction when you found out that we'd be recording after doing a 5-show run at the Playhouse?
Excited?
I think,
Yeah,
like Alice
excited.
said, excited, concerned, but it was nice that it was going to be immortalized in a recording, and that all our work was going to be put towards something that we could have forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we practiced it enough already, like through the 5 shows, so we would, be super secure when we recorded it. So
Ready to go.
yeah.
Absolutely. For artists, I guess this is a question for you. How do you relate, or maybe how are you different from your characters in the album? Maybe, I don't know who wants to start off. Maybe Spencer?
Sure. I think Sahin and I are very, very much alike. I really related to him right away. He really has a passion for life. He really wants to pursue creating the best life possible for him and his loved ones. And he has his ups and downs. He has a very heartbreaking scene where he goes out and gets into some trouble. And again, Sean Pon is his rock. He's the one that ends up finding him and helping him. And that their love story is just so beautiful. And I hope that everyone gets to experience that kind of love in their life, whether personally or through the stage. Sahin is quite a fighter, and it's really heartbreaking that he didn't get to see the fruits of his labor through his family finally getting to immigrate to Canada after all his work. But he fought really hard for that to happen, and Sean Pon was there to help, and he was able to make that relationship with Sean Pon through his naive courage to just go out there and say hello, basically, and the relationship blossomed from there. Shahin will always be a part of me, and I love him a lot.
Vanya, how are you maybe similar or different from your character?
I find myself quite similar. There's a lot that I personally relate to about Wen Li, and her playfulness, her ambitious nature. But what I think I admire the most is her fierce love for her family. And it just she embodies that throughout the opera, and I really got to embrace that along with her through the progression of the story. And I'm an only child, but I do have lots of cousins, and I loved that Emma got to be my sister throughout the entire run, and we developed a strong sisterly bond. And so, it was just tears every night because I just felt, there was saying goodbye to a family member as they go to go on to a different part of their lives. I've had to say goodbye to a lot of people at the airport, and that was sort of one of the things that really, struck a chord with me every night. It was just those kinds of memories, and so there's a lot to personally relate to, for sure.
Perfect. And Emma?
Yeah.
How are you similar or different?
Well, before I speak to that, I just want to speak to what Vanya said, because she definitely did have tears every night, and I had to be on the receiving end of those hugs, and it was way too emotional too. So she was just so in it every night. It was amazing, and just heart wrenching. So yes, we developed a very special bond. I think for myself, I also find myself quite feeling related to my character of Anna. She because I am a sister, I'm actually a younger sister in real life, so that I guess you could say is one difference. Anna's the older sister. So I don't know what it's like to be an older sister, though I think Vanya and I developed that relationship pretty well. But I do think, in the sense of the career path that I've chosen for myself, has been very different, and I've sort of forged outside of my family in that sense. I do relate to Anna in that regard, and also in the fact that she loves her family so dearly and really appreciates the history of her family, and her finding the photo. Actually, Eugene finds the photo of Bonpon, of Sai-hin, when they're looking through some old things, and you can just tell that she has so much respect and admiration and love for that family and the journey that Sai-hin went through, and Bonpon, to get them to that point. So, yes.
Perfect. The next question, I think, is kind of open to everyone, because I think the experience of taking part in a commission, which means building a story from the ground up and originating a role from nothing, is really, really special and unique. What was it like to kind of bring this to life from words on a page or just an idea in someone's head? How did we do that? What was it like to be part of this commission?
So I was, I got the project 3 years ago, I think at the height of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a way, Chinatown braced me through a period of isolation. I was able to focus. And and also it is so amazing that I got to work with, Paul and Maddie, and then, a whole bunch of wonderful people. And I just found the family tie is so similar to the characters in the opera. And it seems to last a long time. Even now, I really missed it. I sort of imagine I'm at my cottage. Oh, and those days, so bleak, and I'm on the screen and hearing, Paul's recording of the Hoysanides and struggle with the melody and everything. So it's just a fun memory. Even when I hear the realization by live musician rather than a MIDI. I love my MIDI already. That time, oh, okay, this will work. But it is so magical, and I'm so grateful for City Opera, all the team, and I'm also quite thankful for Leaf Music, which is quite interesting. This is a Canadian record label in Halifax. So it seems the project bridge everywhere from the West Coast to Toronto, Montreal, and then go to the East. Yeah, it means so much to me.
Perfect.
Well, I'm a writer by trade, so I usually just deal with words. So to echo Alice, it is absolutely magical to hear your words sung on a stage. You are just totally
What was the question
transported,
again?
and you realize what power there is in music, that it can take words into another realm. So for me, that was just transformational, just to stand there in awe of these singers playing with the words. It was just amazing to go from words on paper to the stage to hearing stuff. Just amazing.
Sorry, the question was, what was it like to be part of a commission, to kind of make something from nothing? Do any of the artists want to jump in on how they built their character? Emma?
Well, I wanted to say, and this is a thing that I really appreciate about working with composers and librettists who are living, that we really have a chance to, there's a real sense of collaboration. I know for myself, I had a few conversations with Alice when we had first talked about the role of Anna, and I think Alice had initially envisioned it as another soprano role, if I'm not mistaken, right, Alice?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
We had talked about how some of the notes and things were, well, I'll just say Alice was very, very helpful and so appreciative of my, of our collaborative discussion about what notes would be more comfortable for someone of my voice part, because I sing lower. and she was just so generous with her time, and just it was just amazing to have that sort of feedback and collaboration, because that's not something that we get to do as singers often, because all the music is that we typically sing is written already. So yeah, that was really wonderful, and thank you so much for that, Alice.
Oh, yeah, I think it is wonderful to work with, work with you and to be able to speak and find the platform that will showcase you the best. I think it's my duty in a way. And I think it works so well to be sung by a mezzo voice actually, compared to Vanya, which she is a coloratura soprano. So there's big contrast. Actually, similar to Matthew, he turned out to be a bass. I was original the role written for lyric baritone, which is higher. But we discussed, and there are always performer asking me to adjust, and I'm very cooperative. I have no problem.
Yes, you are.
Vanya or Spencer, any comments on what it was like to bring the story to life from words on a page?
Well, I've had the pleasure of working with Alice on numerous projects, so I'm quite familiar with her style. But it's still always is a challenge to bring a new work to life and get it off the page, and to do it with your own interpretation in mind, but also with a keen understanding of what the composer wants and what the librettist wants. And I always feel like as artists, we're acting as vessels for the music and streaming it through ourselves and our voices and our unique colors, but always with a sensitivity to, the vision that the creators had in mind. So there's always that balance, and the great part about working together, being able to do that in person after the pandemic and having that experience of workshopping it and finalizing it on stage and then in this recording. You can sort of see just how that the journey that we went through together, and how I think we're all hopefully I think gratified and satisfied with the product. So I know for sure I am. So yeah.
Spencer,
Kind of echoing what both Vanya and Emma said, is kind of the word of collaboration, is that we all really get to work together. There's no predetermined course on how this should go because it's all brand new. So there's so much discussion. There's so much teamwork involved in putting on a new piece. And for me, that's one of the biggest joys about this art form, is that collaboration. So for something like Saihin and Thonpan, we had to kind of navigate how intimate the relationship was going to be, because they were in love at a time where it wasn't socially accepted for two men to be in love. So we had to kind of figure out how much they wanted to lean into that relationship when they were in private, when they were amongst other people. So it's just a really, really fascinating conversation. And for me, diving into the characters and the relationships and their intentions and thoughts and feelings, and literally you're realizing a new human being from your imagination. And as a performer, we get to have the music and the text to fuel our imagination. But as Emma said, it's so nice working with people that are around, that we can have these conversations with, ask questions, kind of debate our views versus their views, and kind of figure it out together. It's one of the most exciting things for me. I really love it.
Perfect. I have one last question, and anyone could answer this. I think it's open to composer, translator, artists. I want to close with this theme of, again, nothing without love. I think it just echoes so beautifully the whole album. And when I hear the album, I very much hear that love. How were you able to bring that aspect of, I don't know if it was like family or past or just your own lived experiences into the album? Because the final cut, you can really hear that love come through. How is that done?
Well, I don't know if I can say exactly how it was done, but I'll say again what I said earlier, that we really, as a cast, formed a very special bond, I feel. And I think, that's a unique thing in this time, to feel like everybody is striving for the exact same goal, and that we really wanted to lift the story off the page and portray what it meant to all of us to everybody else. So I don't know, I feel like that sort of, you can hear that and maybe in some of the recording, that our relationships between each other in real life, but also as our characters.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think every night that we got to perform it, and throughout rehearsals too, we just sort of deepened and strengthened that relationship with one another as a cast and a team and creative team, and to our characters. And in some ways, you know, the great thing about having that run of 5 shows is we got to experience all the nuances and subtleties and color, and really bring that into the recording eventually. Like we had Mary to work with too. She guided us through it and really tried to get us to be authentic with our delivery. And sometimes that took a few tries to kind of get rooted and settle into the into our characters. But we got there, and I think we're all really, as I said before, I think we're all really pleased with the product, and I'm glad to hear that, Victoria, as you listen to it, that you can hear the nuances. So that's always, you know, goal achieved, and I think that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I think kind of like what Vanya and Emma said, feel like we're all on the same page, is that we really had this connection with one another. And like Vanya said, having the run of 5 shows beforehand, we were able to experience that connection with the audience. And I think that's so driven from our connection as a cast, but also our connection to the story and the subject matter. We all knew how important it was to ourselves, to one another. And I think in the end, the audience felt that. And they also felt like it was a story that was really important to the history of Vancouver. So performing it in Vancouver itself was really, really magical. And I think given the circumstances, it ended up being just so magical throughout the live performances. And we were able to just kind of carry that momentum into the recording. It was literally, like you said, we did 5 days of shows and then immediately 2 days of recording. So it was nonstop. It was go, go, go. And of course, that's exhausting and tiring, but I think it did give us the momentum of that magic. There was no stall in that excitement and that, like I said, the connection to each other and the subject matter and to the audience. It really felt like when we were recording, the audience is right there with us, breathing with us, and feeling every emotional moment that this opera gives.
For me, I think as the music creator, I have to love the script to start. And when I received the libretto, one thing, I was a bit overwhelmed because of the technicality of the language, but I totally fall in love with the story. And that love, and I quote Sansa said, the word driven, that drive me to create something that I can, let's say, beautiful, hopefully in my own rights of expression. And hopefully these feelings will be convincing. I always felt I have to compose by heart. I mean, through my heart, not to just deal with technical thing or effects or any contemporary technique. This just have to be genuine and communicative. And this is one kind of love about, you know, serving the story, and hopefully the performers, the singers, and the audience will enjoy the product at the end.
Nothing without love. So I'm the historian, and usually in history, you don't hear the word love. You hear history, you hear the laws, you hear population. But nothing without love in this case it's all about love. That history wouldn't have been driven if these men did not feel this love for family, for community, for each other. It's everything for love.
Perfect. Well said. I'm going to begin my closing remarks, and then I'll be passing it off to Paul. For me, though, the 5 nights in September of 2022 at the Playhouse, our audience got to hear the results of a really beautiful story of strength and resilience in the face of adversity and loss. And we believe that the final album cut is a really fitting tribute to those who worked in Chinatown and left everything they had in its place. In the recording that you'll hear, we hope that you will be as moved as our audiences were at the Playhouse, and we thank you very much for listening. Our album is now available anywhere that you stream your music, so Apple Music, Amazon, iTunes, Spotify. Just search Chinatown Opera. You'll immerse yourself in the people and the community of Chinatown in a way that we hope will touch your heart. I'd like to finish off today's album launch party by thanking you for joining us and finally passing on the final word to Paul Yi, who's going to lead us in a toast. Paul?
Well, please join me in 3 toasts to the recording of Chinatown being released today. 3 toasts, English, Hoisanese, and then Cantonese. So first, here's to the wonderful words, magnificent music, and superb singing that have come together in this album. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, second, Hoisanese. Chiang Yip said gong, Yim Sen, I got Yim Sen, Yim Sen.
Yim sing, yim sing.
Lastly, Cantonese. 我哋今日慶祝歌劇唱碟發行，唱碟成功，唱碟萬歲，乾杯，乾杯。
乾杯，乾杯，乾杯。
Over to you.
Thank you so much.